I think this week we've got the deciding if the Ashes will go ahead in Australia, and there's obviously slight concern, with the fifth Test match, which is, supposed to be held in Perth, but during the because they have their own quarantine rules as well, Western Australia. So any visitors actually in Australia have to do a 14-day, quarantine.
So even the Australians have to quarantine.
Yeah, so it's like we're going to Wales and we have to do a 14-day quarantine. That's. I don't know why they have that such rule, and that's obviously the question marks they have that, some of the England players. And also the other factor is, can families travel, with them? I think in the space of 6 weeks they're going to have 5 Test matches being played, and they need their families there with them. So I think there needs to be some, exemption made, for the England players, because we need the, the Ashes series to go ahead in Australia, because Test cricket, Test cricket to survive, we need big series to go ahead.
So they haven't finally come to the decision yet. They're still lobbying or deciding what they're going to do. Is that right then? Yeah,
next week I think they're going to decide, what the outcome is, and if that rule changes. So I think the major one is that Western Australia one. They want to play the Test match at Perth, the last one. If it's not possible, then they'll probably play somewhere else in the other 4 states. But that's the issue, and look.
Do you think some of the British cricketers won't go if their families can't go with them for 5 weeks?
Yeah, look, I think there'll be some cricketers, who would decide that it'd be too much for them. We've seen the likes of Moeen Ali. He just, announced his retirement from Test cricket because of the COVID, fatigue. It's getting too much for them. Chris Gayle from the IPL just taking a bit of a break, so when he gets, goes to the T20 World Cup, rejoins the West Indies squad. I think you need the families there. So it's very difficult now for players, after the last 2 years, to keep being in this COVID bubble.
OK.
And then we've got a Premier League story, similar sort of thing. How are we coping with COVID?
Yeah, look, I think with the Premier League players, they have to be vaccinated to play for, to the international teams, especially, the red list countries. And I think that is a good decision, especially when we saw during the Argentina-Brazil game, there was a couple of Aston Villa and Tottenham Hotspur players who actually, weren't vaccinated or didn't do the quarantine rules.
To be honest with you, I'm going to disagree with you on that being a good decision, because it doesn't make any difference. I mean, if they've already had COVID, maybe they should be testing them for antibodies rather than pushing them to take a vaccination they don't really want to take. But that's another thing. So do you think that again, there'll be a lot of players that don't go then, if they're not allowed to?
Well, it's an interesting one, because they go and have their international break, but then when they come back, they will get a bespoke, like, their own COVID, environment, bubble, and that'll be 10 days. They have to separately do that and then join their team so they can train, in that environment. But you just kind of think, are we, being too cautious now,
Yeah, it doesn't make logical sense, does it, anymore?
It's like, are we just being too protective about this whole COVID, bubble? You get vaccinated and that's it?
And I think you're right there. Whether it was the vaccine was meant to be what liberated people to move on, or whether it was that they'd actually had COVID. And I think we've all said, how do we live with it? How do we move forward? And some of these things, and as you say, the complications of different rules with different countries and what they want you to adhere to.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.